It's time to talk to probably my favourite columnist, an in-demand man of ideas who writes for the Sunday Times, the Sun and the Spectator. A very warm welcome to Rod Liddle. Hi, Rod.
Good morning, mate.
A mind-boggling week, really. Lest we forget, this all started with the killing of black victim George Floyd by a white cop in Minneapolis. The Black Lives protesters in Bristol pulled down a statue of the renowned local slave trader and philanthropist Edward Colston, who actually died 300 years ago. And then we had the defacing of Winston Churchill's statue. By the way, the material old girl, Madonna, was there, so that was very special. Now everything started toppling. Little Britain, the Mighty Boosh, League of Gentlemen, Beau Selector, Gone with the Wind. Paramount has dropped its longest running show in American history, Cops, after 32 series, because it once showed police violence. But what I want to ask you, these are all the news facts, but philosophically, where do you think we're heading when the Mayor of London, one of the most important and biggest cities in the world, sets up a so-called, wait for it, Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm, which sounds nice and Maoist, doesn't it? Dedicated to the tearing down of monuments. Is this the kind of systematic eradication of history to satisfy today's moralistic masses?
Yes, it's the tyranny of now. That everything has to conform to absolutely everything we believe in now, whereas, of course, history isn't anything like that. You could look to Gandhi and see that he was a racist, for example. You can look to the Prophet Muhammad and see that he was a slave owner, for example. But we don't castigate people for those particular beliefs. We simply find those beliefs today untenable, but accept that they were living in different times. It's very odd. But the problem, I don't think the problem particularly is Black Lives Matter. The statement Black Lives Matter is fundamentally true. There's no problem with that. Yep. The organisation itself, though, aims to dismantle imperialism, capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and state structures. It wants to tear everything down. So all those people who think, Black Lives Matter, that sounds okay, which it does on the surface, or to look a bit beneath the surface. But they're not the problem. They're not the problem. The problem is, as you put it, the institutions which go along with this out of a kind of craven cowardice, such as you said, Paramount or Yorkshire Tea, which I won't be drinking anymore, nor indeed Thai food. But then I don't drink tea, so I don't suppose it matters. But it's the way in which institutions, liberal elite institutions, but also the companies which wish to be seen as desperately woke, go along with this arrant rubbish.
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean the crux of what I think is our problem. Good luck to Black Lives Matter, even with their mission statement. They have every right to believe that. They have every right to fight for that. But the problem we have in this country, and probably all over, especially in America as well, is not what they're up to, but the way our institutions react to what they're doing. So, for example, the Premier League, when that kicks off again pointlessly behind closed doors, I wish they weren't doing that, by the way, but all the players, the teams are all going to have Black Lives Matter on the back of their shirts.
Yes, well, they ought to know what it stands for, except most of them, of course, won't have a clue. They'll just think, much as many people do, Black Lives Matter. Well, they do matter. Of course they matter. And it's important we remember that. And it's important we remember it in London, particularly when so many young black kids are killed every year in stabbings and so on. You know, black lives do matter, and we've got to sort that out. But they don't understand that I suspect the Premier League, which isn't the world's most intellectual organisation, I suspect the Premier League doesn't have a clue that Black Lives Matter is actually something way, way to the left of even the Socialist Workers' Party. You know, it's an extraordinarily left-wing organisation, which isn't simply about racial equality. Indeed, it doesn't like racial equality. You know, it doesn't like whitey very much.
Yes. Now, I mean, that, in fairness to, I think, a lot of those people demonstrating last weekend, and probably today as well, I don't think they're aware of Black Lives Matter's mission statement either.
No, I'm sure many of them aren't. But it's you know what we've talked about, which is the institutions getting on board with this, and it's the same problem, I think, which affects people like Emily Maitlis and Newsnight, which is that They think that Twitter is telling them the truth. They think that because there's this furore and howl round on Twitter, which is largely captured by the liberal left, that they think that is in some way a reflection of the mood in the country, and it isn't remotely. I suspect if you did a poll of is it right to tear down these statues, it would be 80% saying no. I can't believe it would be any different to that.
Yeah, Ed Miliband, when he lost that election to David Cameron, was apparently stunned because he had convinced himself he was going to win because of Twitter. He clearly didn't realise that 13% of people in Britain are on Twitter. 83% aren't on that moronic inferno.
Well, no, indeed, moronic inferno is right. But you're right about Ed Miliband. There was another one, and I can remember seeing this. I can't remember the name of the MP who lost Durham, Laura Pidcock.
That's right. Yes.
And one of her
the one who was tipped to be the next prime minister.
That's right.
Can't even win a local election.
Can't even win a local election. But there was a wonderful exchange which I saw on her. One of the websites which she was on, the Labour, where a woman was saying, "I don't understand it. There's clearly been some form of rigging of the vote because Laura got thousands and thousands of tweets, whereas the Tory got virtually none." And they really believe, and it's like again the Emily Maitlis thing with Newsnight. She thinks she's right because basically all her friends in North London tell her she's right, and Twitter tells her she's right.
And Newsnight viewers are very keen on her views. Both Newsnight viewers.
Both Newsnight viewers. Yeah, it's down to under 700,000 now. It's been a really steep decline.
And when she stepped off the bandwagon, was it last week or was it the week before? Because of her tirade.
Week before, yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, the audience went down to 400,000 because they wanted to see Emily being controversial. So without her, they do even worse.
Yes.
You're an old BBC man. Got to ask you. I was really surprised that the BBC went the reactionary route with its new Director General, Tim Davie, a public school educated, Oxbridge educated, white, upper middle class male. Didn't you think?
It always is.
Yeah, I know. Didn't you think they might sort of? I was convinced it might be a woman this time. And by the way, since the BBC is so hot on racism when it comes to Little Britain, whenever are they going to have a BAME person in the running for the Director Generalship?
Well, or an ethnic minority person anywhere in the upper echelon.
Yes.
This is absolutely true. It gets to the crux of the problem with the BBC, which is that it thinks it's terribly liberal and terribly right on, but actually, in many ways, it isn't remotely. And it's okay to put a few black characters into Eastenders or into a comedy program or on a quiz show where they may not even fit properly. But it's not okay to have them running the company. There's too few black and ethnic minority people in the hierarchy of the BBC, and there always has been. I would have preferred Fran Unsworth as a Director General because I think when I've spoken to her, I've always got the impression that she understands that the BBC has drifted a long way from the core values.
Yeah,
of the people who pay its licence fee.
I think it's lost the audience. To go back to our basic discussion here, Rod, where are we headed? When you've got Sadiq Khan setting up this weird commission, where you've got literally, local authorities examining what statues to pull down, and sort of changing the face of the country. Where do you think we'll be in 5 years?
Well, my hope is that there will be a reaction to this reaction. And it's time, really, that ordinary people spoke out a little bit. Because these people have hegemony. They have power, but they don't have hegemony. No one agrees with them. It is such a minute number of people who agree with them in the country. And it's a bit like, I guess, the transgender issue, which was very, very volatile and very vociferously campaigned for on behalf of the transgender community, but which I just don't think the majority of British people buy it for 1 minute. They think that that men shouldn't be able to compete in women's sports and stuff like that. A massive majority think that. And I think it's about time. I think the government possibly gets it. I think the government possibly gets it.
Well, they need to stand up, though, Rob, because
they do.
But what you've written in the new Spectator, a new issue of the Spectator, powerfully about freedom of speech, which we're running out of time. But how precarious do you think that precious right of freedom is in this country?
Oh, I think it's terribly precious, and I think it is incontestable that freedom of speech has diminished over the last 20 years in this country to the point where it is genuinely difficult to address issues and therefore solve those issues in the long run without getting yourself into an awful lot of hot water and probably sacked. When you can be sacked for saying all lives matter, which someone...
I know, that the guy on Manx Radio, yeah.
That's right, yeah. When you can say, all lives matter surely, or even contest the notion that because you're, white, that you are in some way privileged. If you can say, well, actually, I don't really think that's true. Yeah. I've been on radio programs, if I sit next to the Guardian's Afua Hirsch and she tells me that I have white privilege when she's a privately school-educated commentator, and I'm a working-class kid from Middlesbrough, where's the privilege? Give me some privilege. I'd love it.
Doesn't make any sense. Just before you go, mate, who are you giving a kick into in tomorrow's Sunday Times?
Oh, I've been standing up for Lord Baden-Powell. He was an utter madman, but he did some good, and we have to remember that we're all better than our worst act, and that people who are bad in some ways can often help the world.
Yeah, I got in trouble on Twitter because I said that I thought they were pulling his statue down because he was a homophobic, racist, Nazi supporter, or was he finally getting his just desserts for forming the Scouts?
Yes, exactly. Yes, I could imagine that. But I come from a family which was in the Cubs and Scouts, and all those really old-fashioned qualities which Baden-Powell was interested in, such as obedience, discipline, loyalty, competition. They're all very, very unfashionable qualities, but they're actually quite useful.
They certainly are. Listen, Rod, always great to talk to you. Look forward to your column tomorrow.
And you, mate.
Keep up the good work. That was Sunday Times columnist Rod Liddle. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and this is Talk Radio.